ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tabletop Cyberpunk. My name is JonJonTheWise. You're listening to the podcast about Cyberpunk Red 2020, 2077, and anything my heart desires. And today we have a very special guest. But before we get into that, make sure you guys join the Discord community. The link will be in the description below. It's a Discord community hoping that you guys will connect with Cyberpunk, find games, talk about Cyberpunk, all the cool stuff. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the YouTube channel. If you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. It's just all Cyberpunk all the time. And make sure you guys follow me on social media at JonJonTheWise on all of them. TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, everything. And make sure you guys join that Patreon for exclusive content like you would be hearing this episode before everybody else. And other exclusive content like games and world building and a whole new series about campaign building. And that's it. Patreon.com/JonJonTheWise. All right, enough of that. We have with us an illustrious guest, a legend within the community, Cody Pondsmith, the creator of the Witcher RPG. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing all right, but I don't know. I didn't want to talk now. I'm not going to live up to that.
That's what I do. I build up my guests, and then they're like, "Oh, I don't know what to do." Like, I build them up to like this high pedestal.
Build me up and let me tear myself down.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically, I only have people on my podcast that I like really admire, and then the whole time it's just an hour of me telling them how much I love them, and then making them uncomfortable. That's pretty much my whole podcast.
I will try not to let my head get too big.
Well, it's all good, man. Yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Cyberpunk. I'm a huge fan of everything your family does. And I have so many things I want to ask you. I did give you like a list of questions, but you know, like
Yeah.
I did the I usually do the list because it's like it relieves anxiety from both parties because like we've never met each other.
Yeah.
And it's like at least we know like where it's going, the conversation. But you know, who knows? Me and you might start talking about whatever we like and things. Like I like your hair. It's nice.
Thank you. I would say the same, but I like your beard though. I am jealous. I wish I could grow a beard like that.
You can't. I hear that from people. They're like, "Oh yeah, mine just doesn't do that. Yours doesn't like do the beard thing."
Not really. It gets out a bit, but it doesn't fill in super nicely. This is like the best beard I can get. I usually trim it up a bit more, but yeah.
Oh, by the way, you guys know the drill. You'll hear my son screaming in the background because he loves his dad. So, and I'm sure you know about loving your dad, as you are part of the family business. Yep. I gotta ask you, man. I also work in the family business with my father-in-law, but because he's my father-in-law and not like actually my dad, I think it works. Because me and my dad, we would just butt heads, dude. There's no way we would survive a work week. So I just want to know, like, what made you decide to get into business with your pops and everything?
Well, it's kind of we like to joke around the office that I was raised to become the heir apparent of Talsorian, but weirdly that's actually not even vaguely true. There was no real concept of me necessarily, joining Talsorian or anything like that until I came to my parents with like a copy of Teenagers from Outer Space that I had found when I was super, super young. And it just sort of evolved from there. I grew up in a family of game designers and role players. And I just got into tabletop. And at a certain point, I had that arc that I think a lot of tabletop designers have where like I just started making games.
Yeah.
I just started like working out games and stuff like that. And that sort of evolved into me, taking more of an interest in it. A lot of people don't know I literally started out in the mailroom of Talsorian back when it was in our house.
That's so cool.
Like
sorting mail.
I started out and it was basically every time we got in an order on our site, I would go down to what was literally like a closet in our basement and go pack up all the books, and then Lisa would take them and send them off. And I just sort of worked. I literally worked my way up from the mailroom, which is pretty hilarious. But
Humble beginnings.
no, it was no, it's very interesting because I did not. There was not this like you're gonna grow up to be part of the company. It was more just sort of the situation of I came into it over time, and eventually, I'd help out on projects and stuff like that. Um, as we sort of kind of started Telsorian back up again.
It's cool that your dad and mom both had the wisdom to not like force it on you. And they were probably like, if he shows interest, then that's what, because that's kind of like my philosophy with my kid too. Because my wife's like, dude, don't get your hopes up that he's gonna be a nerd like you. Because if he likes football and baseball, you're gonna be like heartbroken. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do reverse psychology. I'll be like, you don't want to see this. This stuff sucks. It's lame, and see what happens.
We'll see how that works. I'm curious.
I know. I'll keep you updated. But is that basically kind of like how they did it? They were just like really like, yeah, if he does it, he does it. If he doesn't, whatever, you know?
Pretty much. For a lot of my childhood, Telsorian, it was, we like to say that we were running silent, as it were. We had sort of gone into hibernation of sorts. For a lot when I was growing up, Mike was working at Microsoft, and then later Monolith, and in the video game sphere, as it were. Um, so we really started kicking things up after I got somewhat older, and I was actually like participating more, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was this sort of like I just kind of came up into it, and that kind of helped like branch out into stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's like the The Witcher. Well, we wound up on The Witcher because we did this deal with CD Projekt for Cyberpunk, and as part of that, they contacted us because they wanted to do a Witcher tabletop role playing game, and they were asking if we had any suggestions or if we wanted to do it. And I foolhardily threw my hat into the ring on that. At some point, I think it was like Mike came in and said like, "Hey, they're asking about a Witcher TRPG. Do you want to do it?" And I was like, because I've been playing Witcher 2
Mm-hmm.
like religiously at that point. I was like, yeah, I was absolutely down. Um, so I sat down and basically in the time between when they told us that and the first time me, Lisa, and Mike went over to Poland to look at Cyberpunk stuff, I sat down and basically wrote what would be roughly the skeleton for the Witcher TRPG in like a big horrible green binder, and then took it over to Poland to show it to them.
Yeah. Well,
So yeah,
you guys had the framework of it's called the fusion system, right?
it's Interlock and Fusion are both very similar. Interlock came first, and then Fusion is kind of a building on Interlock.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Is it called fusion because the dice explode up and down now? Is that like the only difference?
um, there were a few small changes in Fusion as compared to Interlock. Um, honestly, I could not give you an encyclopedic list of those
Yeah,
changes,
yeah, don't
but
worry.
it's little bits here and there.
Sure, sure. I didn't expect you to like. I'm not trying to grill you. I'm like, tell me the differences now. Of course not.
Let me pull out my no.
Yeah, that's cool. But I mean that I admire that whole idea of like you're like, okay, I'll try this thing out. Yeah, I want to make a game because I'm sure you've made games, and we'll talk about your insane game idea that I heard it on the
Yeah.
podcast with Phil and everything. So I got to hear about that again. But how do you even start something like that? Like it's another franchise, it's another world. What's like day one stuff that you do?
So and this is like a big part of how I build games in general. I've always found that because a lot of how I build games is either self-taught or I learned it from Mike or I learned it from studying other games.
Yeah.
Um, I've never officially gone to school for game design, but since my father was a game design professor, I got some
A little
through
bit.
osmosis. But I find that in a lot of cases, the first step is to take a look at the world you're trying to represent, and then once you're reasonably sure you have a good concept of that, build character creation.
Gotcha.
Because in I find that character creation, because they have to work the player into playing the game, and every aspect of character creation touches on some aspect of the game design. If you build character creation, then you have like a framework for what you want the game to do.
100%.
Because at some point you're going to say like, okay, now that I have made this class and I know that this class is a wizard, I now know there has to be a magic system.
That's the best way.
And if I feel, a lot of what I do is based off feeling, which is I think part of the sort of learning through osmosis.
Yeah.
If I go through and I say like, okay, well, I want wizards to have access to like this many spells of this intensity at character creation, then that gives me a framework for kind of how I want to build the magic system. I know what I want in the end. How do I make that happen, as it were?
And make it unique, because I mean, making a wizard, like, how do you not copy everybody out there? It's been done 1,000 times.
Yeah.
What do you do differently, right?
Well, that was one of the fun parts about Witcher, was trying to build a magic system that accurately, or at least reasonably accurately, portrayed how magic happens in Witcher. There was a lot of kind of going back and forth on, what tangibly that system had to do and what it had to feel like to get a system that reflected the very dangerous, very sort of swingy nature of magic in Witcher, until you got to like the higher power levels, effectively.
Gotcha.
To where you were kind of more competent in that magic. So a lot of it is just like, you start with character creation, you figure out what you want to do, and then you figure out those systems like branches off of the trunk of character creation. And then it's just a lot of iteration of like, this didn't really work. Maybe if I change this number here and I lower this number here, let's test that.
Gotcha.
That didn't quite work. And I'll flip this number here and I'll put this descriptor here. Does that work?
Yeah, and then then you release the game and then somebody breaks it like immediately, right? Yes. I was hearing in an interview what was the thing that happened?
So I have two that are the big ones. And one of them is a really important object lesson for new game designers. The first one is Quen. Because in Witcher, you have the Quen sign, which is the shield sign. And it has two forms, and one creates a force field around you, and the other absorbs damage that you take. And one big part of doing the Witcher TRPG was basing it on the video games, because we were, licensed by the creators of video games. So I went a little too far in the, effectively showing what was shown in the video games, mirroring as much as possible.
Gotcha.
And wound up with a Quen that, if you cast it reasonably, would just make you damn near invincible.
Oh shit.
Because in a lot of cases, that's how it was represented in the games. My wife, when she played Witcher 2, did like a full Quen build. And like, she was not super comfortable with the game, but she got really good and powered up Quen a lot, so she could tank through the game effectively.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
But that came out terribly, because it absolutely broke it in half.
Yeah.
So I had to rewrite how that works. And the other one, the more object lesson, is the thing that you don't tend to think about, I think, in a lot of cases, is that the moment you put a game design out to, publication, to distribution, it suddenly becomes this wild situation where the game goes from like 10 to 30 people looking at it to thousands of people looking at it.
Sure. A
And
community.
and no matter how smart you are, no matter how clever you are, thousands of people will always be smarter than you.
Yep, a wise man knows he's a fool, and only a fool thinks he's a wise man.
So I had this amazing moment where I was listening to an actual play of Witcher, and there was a mage who is like a sort of fire mage, and they're in a fight against some bandits or something, and they hit one of them with a fireball, and it kills them, but it lights their corpse on fire. And I'm like, okay, makes sense. That's what the spell is supposed to do. And then she turns around and uses another spell, which is used to grow the area of flame or grow the intensity of flame, and takes the fire from the corpse and transfers it onto another enemy.
So she just makes an AoE spell from a dead body. That's amazing. It's a corpse explosion.
I'm sitting there like, no, I guess that's legal. You can do that.
That's cool. Come on, man. You didn't account for burning corpses?
It's quite fascinating to watch, because you will never think of everything that the community will think of.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess to some degree you gotta expect it, right? Yeah. Especially like you guys got James Hutt to do some of the writing on Cyberpunk Red, and he's like alpha. If there's like a spectrum of like power gamers, he's like the head honcho power gamer. So he's gonna build a system knowing like, I know there's another sicko out there like me. So let me make sure that they have fun too, and the people that are like normal will have fun too.
I've learned a tremendous amount from Mr. Hutt. He is a great designer.
Dude, amazing. So talented.
We have had many long discussions in Balancetown as we have gone through he's walked me through things he's doing for, one section of Cyberpunk or another, or we'll work out. We spent an absolutely blistering few weeks working out a bunch of new spells for Witcher for our upcoming Magic supplement.
Ooh.
And that was a trip. That was an absolute trip.
That's cool, man. Yeah, because honestly, I'm the type that's like, just give me a list of spells, I'll pick one, or give me a list of weapons, I'll pick one. I just want to play the game. But like, I have other buddies that are like, all right, let's go to the back of the book, look for the thing that the game designer messed up on, like the corpse on fire and stuff like that.
My wife is a terrible min-maxer, and I've had to learn to live with that.
Oh man, in a sense, those things I've learned through playing Warhammer 40K, that those people actually help the game a lot, because if you want the game to evolve and you want it to get to like that sweet spot of like balance, you got to have those psychos out there that do those things that bring misery to all their friends, so you know like how to fix those things in the future.
Yeah, no, it's very important. You gotta put that game out to be broken in any way that person can break it, so that you can fix it again.
Yeah, and I noticed like playing Cyberpunk 2020, it was definitely one of those games that the books and the supplements were like, here's everything, do whatever you want, and we don't care. There's no limitations, nothing, and have fun with it. And what that ended up doing is making everybody make their own Cyberpunk 2020 game. So you come to my table, it's a completely different game than somebody else's table. What made you guys decide to kind of rein it in a little bit on Red, and tell people like, hey, if you guys want to have like a balanced experience, try this character creation with these limitations, and we created the book with this in mind? So like, take me through that process if you can.
It's a lot of it is just sort of it's sort of focused on two levels. One of those levels is, we wanted, part of giving that more balanced experience was giving sort of everybody something, as it were. We had this age-old problem in 2020, which, is not every table, but it was a lot of tables that we were seeing, was that, you play a solo, you play a solo with a reflex 10, and you pump up your weapon skill to 10, and then you buy the best gun you can get.
Yep.
Which is not bad. That is a type of gameplay. But we're seeing that was sort of the dominant gameplay for a lot of people. And we wanted to make sure that in Red there was a lot of options. We wanted to make sure that like you would feel as legitimate playing a media on the street as you would feel playing a solo with the best gun, or that you could play a tech who's fixing up the stuff and feel like you weren't a secondary character or something like that, or that you had to like be that sort of solo fantasy. And once again, this does not encompass everybody's experience with 2020, because I've been in some really good 2020 games that were not that.
Yeah.
And once again, that's not bad. I think a straightforward like expendable style solo campaign would be really fucking fantastic if you got a good GM on it.
Yeah.
I would play that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But the other thing was that there is a lot of the sort of variability of 2020 came from the granularity of 2020. And we found that sort of part of the problem with the granularity of 2020 for some people was that it allowed you to build like absolutely anything you wanted, but at the same time it could in some cases slow down table play quite a bit.
Yeah.
Especially if the GM wasn't as familiar, or a player wasn't as familiar.
Yeah, the crunch, right?
Yeah, and that it was very alienating to a lot of players that were, seeing 2020, especially people who were like, we have a lot of people who like only play D&D 5,
Yeah.
or they got brought into role playing through like the Powered by the Apocalypse system or something like that. So we wanted to try to kind of strike a balance such that there was still a good deal of crunch that made you feel like your choices mattered and that you could really plan ahead, but not so much that it would alienate a bunch of people, or newer GMs or newer players could play it without it being too much of a slog until they kind of worked it out. A lot of it is sort of making it a little more friendly to entry level players so that they could work their way up to becoming intermediate or master journeyman level players.
Yeah, totally.
And a lot of that is kind of interesting because I to some extent I'm always quick to point out that so far we've put out the core book for Red, but we have Black Chrome in the works, and we have a bunch of ideas in the works, which are going to bring in a lot of things on top of that core system that will kind of get that somewhat wilder scope back in some places.
Gotcha.
We've only put out the core book, as it were. We haven't had the chance yet to put out all of the supplements, which a lot of those supplements are kind of what made 2020 the game that it is, like Chrome 3.4 and 1.2 and Black Hands and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean every supplement, the Wildside book made the fixer character creation like a whole new thing with that point buy system and the contact list. Home of the Brave gives you, I'm pointing because I'm pointing at it even though I'm not, but it gave you like you could do an entire military campaign with military characters because of Home of the Brave. So if you guys have that kind of stuff in mind for Red, yeah, it's going to reach the same heights as of complexity.
Of course, I can't say anything solid, but of course we have Black Chrome that we're working on.
Yeah.
And we have 2 or 3 more products tentatively in the pipe that will definitely be falling into sort of that category.
As far as releases, are you guys planning to do like 2 releases a year? I mean, I know you can't, obviously, it's hard to tell with COVID and everything right now. But perfect world, would you guys be doing 2 books a year or 3 or 1?
So perfect world, it would be probably 2 releases a year. Perfect world, I would love to do 2 releases per line. especially since we're pretty, I work on Witcher. I jump in on Cyberpunk from time to time, but I primarily work on Witcher. So
Gotcha.
we have a Witcher team and a Cyberpunk team.
Of course.
We are still quite a bit smaller than I think most people really grasp, which is kind of the problem. But yeah, I would say I would love to get to the point where we're doing basically two solid products a year.
I think that's fair. I think that's kind of what everybody would expect, but it's so hard to tell what can be done with the way things are. I mean, even with you guys releasing the core rulebook, it's like they're out there, then they're gone. Then they're out there, then they're gone, and it's like it's so hard to keep up with the demand, right?
Yeah. No, it has been it is such absolute madness. I have to admit that we had I don't know that we could have had even a vague idea of how how fast that first print run would fly off the shelves. Yeah. And we are so amazingly thankful because the turnout for Red has been amazing, and we've seen so many people doing actual plays and doing reviews and talking about it, and it's really amazingly heartwarming, actually.
It's awesome, man. I mean, for someone, I've said it 1,000 times on my podcast, so I'm sorry to all my listeners, but that Cyberpunk was one of those games that I had to sell to my friends because they're like, "What? It's not D&D. I've never heard of it. It sounds complicated." Then all of a sudden, it's front and center, and everyone's like, "Dude, remember that game you were telling me about?" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, please come over right now. Let's do it."
No, it's really great to watch.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy is I'm so ingrained in the communities because I'm a big Cyberpunk fan first. So I like being a part of the communities and talking about it. I've seen a lot of people that are like, this is my first RPG ever. And it's not a small percentage. It's a pretty large percentage of people that are like, I don't know anything about RPGs. I've never played D&D, nothing. And I just like Cyberpunk. I want to see what it's all about. And then, of course, there's the people coming from all the other ones. And it's like this breath of fresh air for the whole gaming community to be able to play this game.
We're really glad because that's what we were aiming for.
Yeah, I was honestly nervous because it's a lot of pressure to take a 30-year-old game that has all that marketing pressure from 2077, and even with the best intentions, it could still be very difficult to pull it off. But I was so happy when Jay sent me the beta rules and I read them and I was like, oh my god, this is going to be amazing, dude. I knew it was a home run. I knew it right away. So this is part of me building you up.
Oh, no, you're good. I'm flashing back to the blood, sweat, and tears that went into putting that core book together.
I bet, man. I bet.
We had, me and James had a harrowing night, his more harrowing than mine, where we had everything in layout and we were just reading the book cover to cover to find anything we could that was wrong.
And you're just jaded, huh? You're like, oh, reading the same thing.
I read through a bunch of that book, just chapter after chapter, trying to find anything at all that was wrong with it. And it was like a solid 12-hour workday that day. It was just get in, read through, find anything you can.
Yeah.
And James stayed till 4 a.m. that day because he read the whole fucking book. Cover to cover, he read the whole book.
That guy's something else, man. That guy's seriously, it's so, I admire everything about him. He's a young guy, so ambitious. He told me the whole Xbox story of talking to the guy and totally blowing it. And then here comes Mike going hey, you want to write Cyberpunk or you want to work with R. Talsorian? And he just hit it out of the park. You know what I mean? That kind of pressure on a young guy. When I was around his age, which was 10 years ago, Jesus Christ, I was there's no way I would have fucked it up, 100%. There's no way I could have done it. So,
he's a great guy and he's a great designer. I'm really happy to be able to work with him.
Yeah, same here. Let's talk about some of the questions that I have here because I'm very curious to see how you feel about, because we were talking about Cyberpunk 2020 and how
Yeah.
at every table is a different table, homebrew, and go-to house rules. Are there any like homebrew rules that you've carried on to Cyberpunk Red and even Witcher that's like your style?
Let's see. Let's see. Well, in Witcher, I have a lot because a lot of the time when I run Witcher, it's for convention games,
Gotcha.
and a lot of that is you have to like get people in. You have like 4 hours to get people to figure out A, what Witcher is, B, what the TRPG is, C, how it works, and then give them an experience.
And you
So
don't really have
I
time to look up rules and see what's right, what's wrong. So you're just like, let's get through it, right?
Yeah, a lot. I like to say in a lot of cases, and this is part of the reason we did easy mode for Witcher, is that a lot of the rules, a lot of the more granular rules in Witcher are there sort of if you want that level of granularity, but the game will run without them. It's things like the various range setups. And when I do table games, I tend to, is it within the range of your weapon? Yes, you can make the shot. If it's like at the far end of your range, I'll probably put you at a penalty. But I streamline a lot of it to kind of make it run faster so that I can get people in and have them have a good time.
Yeah.
Um, in Red, interestingly, in a lot of cases, I don't tend to house rule in a lot of cases because I had a certain amount of like hand in how a lot of the rules went together. I was not on primary design for the core book,
Mm-hmm.
but James and I worked in certain places together on the Jumpstart kit, which a lot of stuff carried over, of course, to the core book.
Yeah.
And I understand where all of those rules come from. I'm always in a weirdly tentative place with not homebrew necessarily, but house rule,
Mm-hmm.
because I have had some horrible house rule experiences where I have house ruled something because I didn't entirely understand why it worked in the system, and then it has bitten me so hard later.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Um,
Trust the process is what I try to tell myself.
yeah, but I've had some where I've definitely house ruled quite a lot. But yeah, Cyberpunk, weirdly, I don't tend to house rule that much, though. I've been thinking about how I run net running, and that's more like an approach thing
Mm.
because it's very interesting to try and get, especially in like a convention game or like a live stream game for somebody else. It's very interesting to try to get them the concept of net running all at once in that short period of time.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm actually with you on that as far as not doing homebrew. For some reason, I'm telling you, Cyberpunk 2020, my games were almost entirely homebrew. I changed things and made different things. Even when I played D&D 5e, I changed things that I didn't like. But for some reason, Red, I would rather play rules as written. Like, I just got around to the evading of gunfire. For the longest time, I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't like it. I don't like dodging bullets. But after people talk to me about it and really like help me understand, it's not evading bullets, it's evading gunfire. You're superhuman. I was like, okay, all right, I get it. And that's pretty much it. Everything else is like I'm playing rules as written. What do you think it is about Cyberpunk Red that has us not making house rules? Well, for you, like you said, you made the rules, but there has to be something else.
I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that a lot of Red is so in certain circumstances, Red kind of stands out a little bit because like a lot of the core focus of Red was on the gameplay, as it were. Um, you know, there are a lot of aspects of 2020 that were, because 2020 the focus was on the realism.
Yeah.
Basically, like there are aspects of 2020 that the focus was entirely on capturing the realism, which we did really well.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always translate over to the gameplay aspect in certain places. So there's things like I have had some hellish times in 2020 playing a low body character
Yeah.
because I'd get hit by something and I'd be stunned, and I'd be trying to roll under my body to get unstunned, and that was just not happening.
Yeah.
Is that realistic? Yeah, but at the same time, it can be sort of tenuous back and forth. And I think a lot of the difference in Red is that while we lost some of that realism, the focus was always on the gameplay experience.
No
Basically, on
matter
trying.
no matter what class, if you're not a solo, whatever it is, your experience is always going to be a fun experience.
Yeah, the concept was trying to make a game that everybody could get into and have fun, and every aspect of it would be fun and give you lots of moments to feel like a badass, and give you a lot of like stories that you could tell after the game. So a lot of Red was built into making that gameplay experience fun. And then on top of it, I was not there when we did the initial design on 2020, but we play tested the hell out of Red.
Yeah.
We sent it out to tons of people. We got a bunch of different people. We play tested it in-house. We play tested it out of house. We beat on that thing until we were damn sure that it was going to run well.
Yeah, I mean, even the way it's designed is designed for playing the shit out of it. I mean, every aspect of it, especially like combat, the combat system is its own skirmish game. I made my first video I ever made on Cyberpunk Red once the embargo lifted was a combat video, because I knew that people are going to come to this and they're not going to realize that there's so much nuance to it, that at surface level they'll be like, you shoot, they take damage, whatever. But it's like, no, dude, cover, grenades, special ammo. I mean, the walls are electrified, all the kinds of crazy shit's going on with combat. And I realized that, like, oh, this is going to be a skirmish game. And Monster Fight Club is making that awesome skirmish game now. I don't know if you know anything about it. Do you know any details?
I know a few things about it. We're
Okay.
we're still working out some stuff, and I can't really say anything.
Okay. I won't press you on it then. But yeah, I mean, the whole point was I immediately looked at this and I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome, because it's a game within a game. The net running is a game within the game. The social aspect of the game is a game within a game, with the opposing roles and stuff like that. So I knew immediately that there was so much nuance to this new system, and it's a thick book too. So I can't imagine how much more can be added to it.
If you can believe it, we were aiming for 320 pages.
Really? Well, you get overshot it a little bit with that
Just
beautiful night market section. Yeah. Let's you know what? Let me step out right now. I'm going to go put my son down to bed real quick, and then I'll come back. If you want to take like a bathroom break real quick or something. All right. So, we are back. I went to go put my son down, ladies and gentlemen. So, to you guys, nothing changed. I wanted to ask you your preference, because for the longest time I've always been the guy that's like, I want to play, I don't want to run the game. And then something happened where I'm like, oh no, I actually love running the game. I love making the game. I have no problem doing this forever. What's your preference? You like playing? You like GMing? What's your thing?
So I had exactly the same experience. I was one of the better GMs in my group, so I just wound up as the default GM for a long time. And I was always like, man, I want to play. And then I found out that I'm a terrible player. I still think about the game like a GM even when I'm a player.
Yeah.
So like I have such a hard time, especially in curating characters. Everyone who runs me fucking hates me for this, because I have that thing, which I'm sure you probably have as well. I'm sure every GM has this, where I have great character concepts that I like flag away for games. But that means that when somebody calls upon me to be like, "Hey, I want to run a D&D game, send me over your character. You can do anything in the core book or whatever," and I do it, and I make a character, and I'm super invested in that character, and I'm like ready to play that character, and I have a character image and everything, and I send him my character sheet. I'm like, yeah, this is my character. they're a half orc or whatever, and then like 2 weeks later, I'll have another character concept. And I'm like, hey, so
you're that guy, huh?
yeah, I'm that guy. Which worked great when I'm a GM because I'll just take that character, file it away. I'll use that character in my game later.
Hell yeah.
But I've gotten to the point where I do think I generally enjoy running more than I enjoy playing. Because I like everything, like so much of role playing for me is about telling a story.
Yeah.
So I love to put together a story and then watch my players explore it.
Yeah,
That's
or
like
fuck
my
it up.
favorite part. Yes. Well, explore it and also fuck it up.
Yeah, I'm one of
Because
those
they
people
never
that
don't fuck it up.
exactly, and that I've always thought to myself like, they're supposed to fuck it up. If they don't fuck it up, then that means that there's something wrong. And I actually look forward to it. I'm like, I wonder how they're gonna fuck it up. And that's like the fun for me. You know what I mean?
It's always interesting to watch because you can't, no matter how well you know your players, you can't tell exactly what they're gonna do, especially some players. I've run games where like I ran a Mutants and Masterminds campaign where I was gonna do the classic like you're high school kids and you discover your powers and you're gonna become a superhero team or whatever. And partway through, I had like the good guys shield kind of organization show up and be like, hey, welcome to the Avengers Initiative or whatever. They wanted to basically have them like register with this Secret Service organization or whatever.
Gotcha.
And they just went full Brotherhood of Evil. They just like they went full Magneto, like down with the humans, like not full down with humans, but like it just went 360. I'm like, okay, am I kind of running a villain campaign now?
Yep. Are we the baddies?
But like, I mean, it's always fun to see when that happens, especially like in those like split second decision moments. My wife is completely insane because she has like she has a brilliant mind, but also no self-preservation instinct in any game she's in.
Because she's like YOLO, dude.
So she will do absolutely mad things just like out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
It always throws things off, and it has led to some interesting inter-party discussions. But it's always kind of interesting to see where those lead because you have that moment of like, oh, okay, wasn't expecting that.
Yep.
Give me a second.
Yeah, one of those situations for me was my players had robbed the wrong place. They like robbed a Merc bar and like shot it up, and then they were like, "What's behind the register?" and then took all the money there. So I was like, okay, I got to make sure that someone comes after them. The person that owns the bar is a corporate, okay? And this is like her side thing. So she sent a hit squad after them, and then I was like, it has to be an appropriate hit squad. It can't just be like a couple boosters. This has to be a big deal group because they robbed her bar where mercs come. So she obviously has mercs that she can hire to go after them. So I had this whole plan of like a van pulling up. They open the door. There's a minigun turret on it, and they ambush them in the middle of the streets.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, am I going to kill one of these guys? Like, I think I am. I mean, a minigun is going to kill them if, like, just realistically, if it makes sense. And they did the one thing I never thought that they would do, and they ran away.
Oh my gosh, okay.
I was like,
wow.
It blew my fucking mind, dude. I was like, oh my god, I didn't account for you. They were like, yeah, why would we stick around and fight a dude with a minigun? And I was like, well, yep, that makes sense. But I'm so used to them like wanting to murder hobo everything that when they ran away, it totally completely. I was like, okay, well now I got to figure out something else to do because you guys ran away.
I did my best stories come from convention games because it's this amazing ability to get 6 people together for like 4 hours and have absolutely hell break loose.
Hell yeah.
I once ran a Witcher Con game at Gen Con where the whole plot line was this like Brides of Bluebeard thing where like this noble that was ruling a city kept taking brides and the brides kept disappearing. Eventually they found out that he was marrying these women so that he could sacrifice them to a noon wraith that was trying to kill him. But through the course of discovering this, we had basically like a witcher, a priest, a doctor, and a man-at-arms. And they got to this amazing point where they had snuck into it because the next marriage, like the 7th marriage, was going to happen. And the priest, who went full rogue, was this like fire and brimstone eternal fire preacher who, separate of the party, went to the chapel where the priest who was going to be conducting the ceremony was, and basically knocked him out and stole his clothing and was impersonating him.
Oh, that's genius.
And had been giving like fire and brimstone hellfire speeches in the local tavern to the point where he had like inducted an acolyte who is like working with him. At the same time, it all came down to this big battle where they're fighting the Noonwraith in this castle, and the Witcher's up there, you know, with their silver sword. The Man-at-Arms is fighting as well, and they're up in this beautiful like gallery hallway with like paintings and tapestries fighting this Noonwraith. And the doctor, despite the fact that they've got like a bow and arrow, they're like, nope, nope. So they wander back downstairs while the mage is going. They have a mage. The mage is going down to find the corpses of the women who were sacrificed to burn them and release the curse or whatever.
Yeah.
The doctor wanders back downstairs to where the noble is hiding away in this vault, and seriously, genuinely goes to them and says, "I want to use my business skill to negotiate a better contract, so we'll get paid more for this."
What? In the middle of like the whole combat, all the shit's going on, they're like, let's sit down and talk numbers.
In the middle of this dramatic Noonwraith fight, where the Witcher and the Man-at-Arms are like going blow to blow with this wraith, and the mage is going through the catacombs with like the torch, and he's finding the dead bodies of the women. The doctor is in this library, standing outside this vault door, negotiating contract with the noble.
Oh my god, man. And you're like, yeah, I mean, he's listening to what you have to say. Now let's go back to you guys. All right, you're on the verge of death. That's amazing, dude. Yeah. That's great. So how did they kill the wraith? And
they killed the wraith. The doctor negotiated an excellent contract that got them paid far more than they probably were originally going to. Then they still stole a bunch of shit on the way out.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, guys. You're welcome. That's great, man. Yeah, I mean, there's something about that whole surprise and stuff. Those are the memorable moments, you know, when stuff like that happens. It's not memorable what like skill checks you do. It's memorable like the crazy shit that you guys get into because you want to take chances. So I always welcome it. I always do. Yeah. Let me ask you another question, because we're talking about Cyberpunk 2020, modernizing it and everything. We're now at this new era, especially with COVID, that like the virtual space is huge. I mean, for some people like me, it's my exclusive space where I can play. I don't have a gaming group. Yeah. I have one friend that I see every once in a while, and we do one-on-one sessions. But as far as like a house group, I don't have that. Now, I know that it's all kind of like brand new to a lot of people. There's like Roll20, there's this, there's that, it's licensing, who knows what we do. It's like a whole mess. But how do you guys feel, or how do you personally feel about like the virtual tabletops? Do you think it's the future? Is it part of the modern gamer? What are you guys doing as far as keeping it in your brain as you guys develop the games?
See, that is kind of a weird one, because it's so, for a lot of people, it's so dependent on your sort of situation. It's like I'm in a D&D group that runs on Roll20, like weekly. And that's, obviously we got to do that because everybody comes from a different household.
Yeah.
And, my GM doesn't necessarily love it, but I think it's very cool. Like a lot of the map tech and like the dynamic lighting and stuff like that is extremely cool.
So you've experienced
I get it.
the virtual gaming kind of to its fullest, because dynamic lighting and stuff like that's a little more advanced.
Yeah, and it's very cool, and I think that the really important thing about it is that, beyond the great use we're getting out of it during COVID, it's a solid way because back in the olden days, and by the olden days I mean like 5 years ago, I wound up one of our players in my Pathfinder game like moved to Florida. And so we had them, and we just had to put them like on a laptop on Skype next to the table.
Yeah.
And
it's not
that
good.
was just absolutely horrendous.
No, it's not good. I've done the one guy on Skype. It's terrible.
Yeah. So it's really, really great, especially if you have, people who are forced to be remote for some reason. Like I'm in a weird place where I probably would do my weekly game on a virtual tabletop just because I like a lot of the aspects of it. But I have the unique situation of my game is basically all my housemates.
Yeah.
So we can get together, so it feels a little bit silly to have everybody on their laptop, but I'm still on the lookout for like a screen or a tablet large enough that I could get a digital map, because that would be really nice.
Yeah, I've always told people, like, I made a video on theater of the mind versus battle maps, and I've always been the type of person that's like, why have a versus? Why not theater of the mind and battle maps? You know what I mean? Use whatever tool is at your disposal, and there's really something special about being in the same room with each other. As much as virtual tabletops are awesome, like me seeing your face, rolling the dice, that's something special that I don't think that with video chat you can kind of capture it, but it's still not the same. And I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I think that is a really, really good tool if you have to be remote for some reason. But I still think that in person, once we get out of this unpleasantness, I still think that, in person is generally better if you can.
Yeah.
At least for me. That's my take on it, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say from a more official standpoint, Talsorian is in a place where we came a little bit late to the virtual tabletop kind of arena, as it were, and we're kind of in the process of getting our stuff out onto more virtual tabletop places. We are absolutely 100% down for it. We just have to find them and get our stuff up on them.
Yeah.
We have a lot of meetings about like, is it worth it to go to this virtual tabletop? Are people using it? Or people asking for our stuff on that tabletop? What can we do for it?
Yeah.
There's some really very cool character sheets made by people for Witcher and Cyberpunk on various virtual tabletops.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've noticed from the community is the desire of everybody. And you're talking about people that are coders, artists, I mean, game designers themselves, and they have this like insane passion for Cyberpunk. And I try to give you guys a little bit of support behind the scenes by letting people know, like, hey, it's a small group. They didn't expect this kind of notoriety, and they're trying their best. They care about the fan base. So I think that some people might be a little bit frustrated with the way things how like they just want to be able to log into Roll20 and everything's there. Obviously, there's a lot of shit that goes in between that, and I understand their frustration. But what do you guys have, like a solid plan? Are you guys kind of trying to still figure it out as you go, or what's the deal with the future of virtual tabletops?
To some extent, a lot of it is research and follow through on that research. We have to basically figure out where we would have the most impact, and then I think for a lot of people, a lot of the stuff that they don't necessarily see is that it is a pretty reasonable investment of time and effort to get it up there. And a lot of times we like find people who are willing to help put our stuff up there, as it were,
Yeah.
because we are tremendously swamped with everything else we're doing. So it is not a lack of the desire to put our stuff up on virtual tabletop. It's more a situation of being kind of still unfamiliar with it
Yeah.
and needing that manpower to actually get it up there in a reasonable way.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I know that you guys have been very careful with your licensing. It's like a handful select people that actually get the official Cyberpunk Red licensing to be able to do the kind of stuff, and that's totally understandable. So I'm sure that goes into mind as well in the future when you're thinking about where it's supposed to go and all those things, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that we don't get anything that, even more than like tarnishes the license or anything like that. We don't want to license somebody to do something that, then everybody thinks is, terrible or, offensive or, any of that stuff. We want to make sure that anything we're putting out and anything that our licensees are putting out are of good quality and stuff that people are genuinely going to be excited to see.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I think you guys have done a good job. I mean, Monster Fight Club is amazing. Their minis are beautiful. The Sirenscape, beautiful sounds for all types of scenarios. And even Q Workshop, right? That's the other one that you guys work with. As far as I know, that's the only people publicly that we know of that have the license, right?
The license.
Licensing to make products.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And will there be more in the future, you think? Or like stuff that we don't know that are kind of under wraps for now?
I will tell you that today I just had a meeting about some stuff that's under wraps.
Perfect.
So one of the things, and I don't think I'll get in trouble for saying this.
Sure.
One of the things we're doing is we're taking a really solid look at how people play the game and what game aids are useful for people playing Red and playing Witcher.
Perfect.
We're in a place where there are a lot of game aids that people use for various games, and a lot of them could be done really well for Cyberpunk. So we actually have a list of possible concepts for game aids and sort of supplementary products that we'd love to put together. And some of those are being implemented in certain ways, but once again, I can't talk about it.
Sure. No, that's great. That's exciting just to know that you guys even have that in mind. You know what I mean? It's good for the community to hear that you guys are working on it. I know you guys love giving us surprises, and that's how you're like, we'll talk about it when we're ready to talk about it, because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or make them feel like we don't care. But it's like the exact polar opposite. You guys care so much, and that's why things are a little bit under wraps, right?
Yeah. We don't want to. We've had situations where, we have, come out and done a big show, and then, things have forced us to push back, or things have forced us to change aspects, and we don't really want to do that to the community. If we come to you and say that we're doing a thing, we want to be able to say, this is what we're doing. You can roughly expect it at this time. This is basically what it's going to be, and we want to be solid in that by the time we actually talk about it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I appreciate it as a fan, and I'm excited to see what kind of stuff you guys have down the pipeline. Like, super excited. You don't even know. I mean, just thinking of just the name Black Chrome. I mean, that's fucking awesome, dude.
I've seen some aspects of Black Chrome, and while I can't say anything specific, Black Chrome is going to be a very interesting product because in Red we took part of the sort of like simplification of certain aspects for approachability and for other reasons was making sort of a list of sort of generic type weapons and then the exotics.
Mm-hmm.
And Black Chrome is just like it's just like an airdrop of like crazy weapons, and we have some other things. I think I can get away with saying we have some. Not sure if I can say.
Don't say it.
We have a lot of very exciting things, including weapons and some other things. But I've gotten to take a look at it, and there are some things in there that I'm tremendously excited to use in my own games.
Oh, that's great. That's good to hear, because I know that a lot of the 2020 aspect was like gun porn, like all that whole thing, like you talked about earlier, the realism and everyone. I even talked to Seth Skorkowski, and he said that him and his buddies used to have arguments like, is the 9mm with the 1d6 plus 2 better than the 2d6 minus 1, or and those kinds of debates. Are we going to be having those same kind of debates?
No.
Okay.
So one of the big changes we made in Red is that we wanted to basically, if you're gonna get a weapon that is not a generic assault rifle or something of the like, we want the specialness of that weapon to stand out, leagues ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So what Black Chrome is going to be when you talk about weapons is it's going to be less sort of the, this is an assault rifle with, +2 weapon accuracy and, +3 damage and, this and that and whatnot. And it's going to be more focused on, this is this specific brand of assault rifle. It's roughly the same as an assault rifle as far as like range, and it probably has roughly the same damage output, but here's like a block of special ability stuff that it does that makes it a special weapon.
Got it.
It's a lot more in that category of like, it's not going to be a bonus on the statistical side, but it's going to be a bonus on like, it's going to be a bonus on this gun or this weapon or this sword or whatnot has, like, for instance, the EMG, the Rheinmetall railgun in Red.
Mm-hmm.
It is technically like an assault rifle, but it just tears through any armor that's at 11 points or lower.
Yeah, it ignores it, right?
Yeah, so it's going to be at that same level of, it is going to have a very cool ability or augmentation to the weapon that makes it cool.
Yeah, I get it. Kind of like along the same philosophy as like the exotics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That's amazing. I can't wait, to be honest with you. That's really exciting to hear. All right, before we get into the fan questions, we got to talk about this crazy-ass game that you have planned. And I'm glad you did The Witcher first, so you can focus on that and make that a perfect product. So when you do this game, it's going to come out perfect, right?
Okay, so if you're talking about this Descendant concept, this is not a game I'm making. This is a horrible endeavor that I've put myself on.
You're going to make it, man. You're going to make it.
At some point I might. It's a very interesting concept, but so the legacy, we call it the legacy game.
Mm-hmm.
The legacy concept came from the fact that I am an obsessive collector of role-playing systems. I have a shelf up on our top floor that is just like ceiling to floor role-playing games.
That's awesome.
And I had the dark realization one day. I was faced with my own mortality as I realized that at the rate I was going, I was never going to play a lot of those games. So I came up with the absolute horrible Iron Man challenge of the legacy game, which is basically a game where, for those of you at home who don't know, the concept of the legacy game is that you start out in one system in some early time period of your world, and everybody makes a character, and then you play that system for 10 sessions. And at the end of that 10 sessions, you go to an entirely different system, and everybody swaps one clockwise. And everybody makes the descendant of the previous person's character. So you're playing like the great 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 grandson of the person to your left,
From a different system.
and then from a different system, and then you play 10 sessions of that, and then you move to a new system, and everybody swaps clockwise, and you're playing the descendant of the other person's descendant of the first person, and you go up like that through the generations, swapping character lines back and forth, which is always fun because you then get to watch people build this association with these bloodlines.
Yeah.
And they can talk about like you can have somebody who is playing the great 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 grandson of another player, and that other player can be like, "Oh man, my bloodline has really gone downhill."
You bring shame to our family. Yeah, I like that.
We have a kind of awkward one in the legacy game currently because we've done 3 legacies,
Ooh,
and we're on the 4th.
okay.
And two of the characters are like semi-immortal. They're super long-lived. So two of the characters from the 3rd legacy game are still technically alive in the 4th legacy game, and they're off screen. But every once in a while, I'm gonna let the players who played those characters like pop up and make commentary about the current characters.
That's it, man. That's such a chaotic mess, but I love it.
So we started out in Verm by Nocturnal, which is caveman like Ice Age era role playing.
Ah, that's amazing. That's such a smart idea. And then what? You're gonna end up in like space, and then you're gonna end up in some otherworldly dimension.
It's been Verm, and they were a group of cavemen who were displaced from their river valley by a dark spirit kind of thing. And then we jumped ahead to Bronze Age, and we played RuneScape or RuneQuest.
Yeah. Yeah.
RuneQuest, where they were these Bronze Age warriors who were descendants of their previous characters who were battling against the same sort of evil entity that had taken sort of an avatar form on the world and had this giant monster. And then we moved forward to Iron Age, and we played in Ragnarok, Fate of the Norns.
Dude, I love that you have these on hand, by the way.
Yeah. And they were like the great descendants of the initial caveman characters, and they were returning to the island that their caveman characters had been run out of to basically finally once and for all defeat this dark spirit.
Dude.
And then we've jumped ahead another 100 years, and they're now in Warhammer Fantasy 4th Edition.
Oh, they're in the grim dark.
Yes, and their characters are the descendants of those characters who are now following this quest set forth by 2 of the characters from the previous game to re-find the ancient artifacts of this predecessor, sort of like their god had given their ancestors these great tools, but their ancestors had shunned the gifts of their god, and the god had spread them throughout the world so that they might once again find them someday.
Oh.
So their characters now in Warhammer are going around finding these artifacts, and they're going to wind up uncovering this sort of dark mystery, surrounding the gods and this dark spirit that invaded their realm so many, centuries ago.
Dude, you just gave me that spark of inspiration. Like, they uncover this ancient ritual site, and then they find like the sword of the old character, and it's like, dude, it's the sword. Oh my god, it's the fucking sword. That's awesome, man. So basically what I'm supposing is you're not actually making a game. What you're making is a supplement. Yeah. You're making a supplement for any game, for every game, is what it is, because you're making a non system, or what do they call it? System agnostic supplement, which I don't think that's ever been done before. I think there's system agnostic games, but I don't think there's been a system agnostic supplement. And basically what that does is it gives you ideas on how you can integrate it into any RPG, any book, anything out there. And add your own mechanics to it to keep this kind of consistency with the story of the legacy going on.
It's definitely a trip. Especially because everybody tends to do magic systems differently.
Yeah.
I have to like weave. It's like Verm, all of the magic is like shaman, like contacting spirits and making deals with spirits. And then in RuneQuest, it's all based around sort of the gods and spirit magic. So I had to weave like now the contacting spirits to make deals with spirits is done in a sort of more organic way where you're reaching out to the spiritual world to pull on the power, and the gods are there and you can kind of call on them for aid. And then Ragnarok is all based on runes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like now we've sort of harnessed the spiritual energy using runes and sort of rune magic, and then going into Warhammer Fantasy. Magic is, of course, Mike, super chaotic and really dangerous. So what I'm saying is that basically, in the wake of the last big event in the third legacy, the gods have been forced to turn their eyes away from the world so they can defend against beings from the beyond. So they're no longer kind of guiding the flow of magic. So magic is now super chaotic and dangerous because the gods are no longer guiding it.
An event happened. That's why magic is different in this game.
Yeah.
That's great. I love that idea of connecting the worlds, connecting the characters. I also love the idea that my character does something really awesome in our campaign and makes a deal with like some god and says, please give my descendants combat prowess or like better combat prowess, and then that translates to +1 sword play in any game that you play with this line of descendants.
We had a really interesting one with that because one of the characters in Legacy 2 wound up becoming a vampire at the very end of that legacy.
That's great.
So we move forward, and there is now just like a vein of vampire blood running through the sort of Domfirs of that bloodline all the way through to this legacy.
That's so cool, man.
It's really wild, especially since everybody kind of, you wind up building on the bloodline heritage. So you get this really interesting thing where like we have all of the bloodlines kind of have this thing that goes through them. So there's one that started out as this like apprentice shaman in the Stone Age game, and we worked out through there that character was basically prone to possession just because they wound up with this ability where they basically boosted their path to becoming a shaman by having a near death experience. So now every character down the line of that bloodline has had this thing about being possessed and or dealing with the dead and spirits and stuff like that.
Yep, as you get your strengths genetically and you get your weaknesses genetically. I love that. That's so cool, man. So it's when are you gonna make this thing, dude?
I have no clue. I may sit down and work something out, but it's honestly, it is a complete Iron Man challenge in one respect. We've actually toned back to doing longer campaigns than just the 10 sessions because I come to my players and be like, all right, totally new system. Everything you know out the window. New
and they're
system.
like, come on, man. We just got warmed up with this one. Yeah.
It was, especially since there are definitely systems like I would have run RuneQuest for quite a lot longer because that game takes some getting used to.
Gotcha. Yeah.
There are definitely some games that you can't dip into for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you also have to be careful what game you guys do start playing because it could totally fucking make the whole thing chaotic. Like Symbiota's Rifts, which is like chaos in itself. That's like a chaos game already. So I can't imagine what it's gonna do to your legacy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm excited. Legacy from our Talsorian Games coming 2022, 2023. We'll see. I'm excited for that. All right. Let's get into some fan questions. These are questions that we got from the Patreon. So If you guys want to ask some questions in the future for my future guests, let me know and join the Patreon. Twiggy has a few. He says, does RTG plan on expanding into the old net for Red? And then they say, do you plan on expanding current weapon systems? We kind of covered that with Black Chrome. And lastly, will they make a more fleshed out enemy bestiary? I never knew how to say that word. And there's a lot of mention of animals, biomade animals, robots, and more that we just don't know how to make. So old net, are we expanding that in Red in a supplement? And is there going to be like a monster manual for Red?
So I will start by saying, in a way, yes to both.
Mm-hmm.
The old net is an interesting situation because we're still figuring out how we would want to model that if we did. In the time period of Red, the black wall is, I think it's just about to go up. So you can still technically get into the old net. It's deeply and phenomenally dangerous because you will encounter rabbits, and it's very likely you will be killed.
Yep.
But a lot of that is I can't say anything specific, but some of that is gonna kind of pop up in supplements down the line as sort of interesting background stuff. As far as actually doing rules for going into the old net, I don't know that we have any plans at the moment, but I have some plans, and I do want to see if we could do something like that, because this is sort of the last time in the Cyberpunk timeline before we hit the black wall going up where you can go into the old net.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot. This is not official. This is not something Telsorian is officially doing.
Sure.
But I've always thought it would be interesting to do old net, almost like mega dungeon type stuff.
Yeah, like a dungeon crawl.
Yeah, you go into you find some old access point to the old net where you can actually get in, and it's absolutely horrendously dangerous. But like, if you get in there and get out, you can like find really cool stuff, especially because of the data crash and all the data swapping that happened during it.
Yep.
Theoretically, if you could get into the old net and get back out, you could get and navigate it somehow. You could get some really, really cool stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Theory.
Old tech blueprints, old corporate secrets. I mean, stuff that you could just sell top dollar anywhere because they're trying to get that shit too.
And then there's all the net ghosts.
Yeah. Well, I have the... Oh, shit. That's scary, actually, because you die in the net. You stay in the net? That's crazy. Whoa.
We don't stay in the net, but we part of the thing we were doing when we were going over Red was the determination that in the last days of the Fourth Corporate War, Arasaka manages to basically weaponize Soul Killer.
Yep.
So there are probably hundreds of netrunners who got soul killed in the last days of the Fourth Corporate War, who are just net ghosts on the old net now.
Oh my god. And there is one line in the core rulebook for Red that like totally blew my mind, where Netwatch is having conversations with this with the AI. What do you guys call them? Not the soul killed AI, the
Transcendental?
I think that's what it's called. It's pretty much AI that just like became self-aware. And they like Netwatch is having some kind of like Cthulhu like bargain with these AI people, like, hey, can we clean up the net? Can you help us out? And obviously you can't tell me more about that. It's like super secret, but holy shit, man, what the fuck is going on?
No, there's a lot of very cool stuff in the old net that I want to dive into. We don't have anything officially planned, but no doubt that we're going to do some old net stuff. Definitely down the line.
Yeah.
In the case of bestiary books, I can say that we have plans for stuff like cyber animals and drones. We're working out some of the stuff like robots and stuff. I can't say exactly when all of it will sort of be finalized and tested, but rest assured that we have some plans for doing future supplements that would be probably not directly a bestiary.
Mhm.
Cyberpunk is a system that we don't really want to do a flat bestiary, but it will probably be needless to say, there will probably be a new Night City supplement.
Yeah, of course.
Um,
I mean, that's expected. I mean, I feel like that's expected, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
And in that, we'll probably have a lot of sort of bestiary type content
yeah.
for like stuff you'll run across in Night City. Like I said, can't say anything 100%, but yes, we will be fleshing out more enemies. We'll be fleshing out the stuff we didn't talk about. We have some plans for some of the crazier aspects of 2020 that will carry forward into Red.
Yeah, I do think that's all great to hear. I do think that there is this desire from people to have like pre-made things,
Yeah.
like pre-made adventures, campaign books, pre-made NPCs, factions. So like it would be cool if we had like a supplement where there's a bunch of gangs, all the leaders, all the henchmen, their history, everything is in this book, and we could just insert it into our games.
I can't say anything specific, but let's just say that we've had that thought at Telsorian as well.
Okay, that's good. That's good to hear. See, guys, I get this kind of information out of Cody in an organic way. All right, let's move out to Max. I'm sorry, I'm gonna ruin your last name. Prius, I believe. And Max says anything at all regarding time frame for more Red books. I think we kind of talked about that already. The 2 a year is what we're trying to do. And any plans, interest to move into the digital space, perhaps an official Foundry VTT system or similar way to play Red digitally. I think we covered that, right? Is there anything else you would say on top of that?
I don't think so. Basically, yeah, our plan is we are kind of spreading our tendrils out into it as as fast as we can reasonably do it without hiring somebody specifically to do that.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and I feel like we talked about that enough. So let's move on to Sean Gregory that says, I'm curious what it was like growing up with Mike as a dad. Did Mike read him grim future noir bedtime stories like William Gibson books? And how common was a game night in the Pondsmith household? Did they play a lot of Cyberpunk?
So, see the weird okay, so I feel like this is probably the answer you'll get from anybody in that what was it like growing up with X? Um I grew up with Mike as my dad primarily,
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of a larger than life personality. Um, you know, uh it was not super weird until we started hitting sort of the later parts of the 2077 stuff. Every once in a while we'd get letters from people that were like, I grew up playing your games and I'm really, I really love them. But like that was in many ways a normal thing and it didn't happen super often. So it was very normal, but then we kind of hit the 77 stuff and it kicked up and it became more sort of like a common thing. And mostly I just tease him a lot.
Yeah.
Um
You got to give
like
your
that's
dad shit or else, what are you doing, right?
yeah, yeah. Um so I mean very very sort of like I can't call out like any specific things really. It's been very normal more or less.
Yeah,
Um
I don't mean to speak for you, but it's also if your dad is your dad. I mean, that's how it
yeah.
is with everybody, and you love your dad and you put them on a pedestal because they're your dad. But then there's people out there that are like see him as a hero, and it's like hard to connect that, right? You're like there's like a little bit of a disconnect with you and those people, right?
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting, and it's very cool to see that he has had such an effect on people. I I think that anybody is lucky to have that sort of effect on people. I hope that Witcher TRPG and the stuff I've worked on can have that effect on somebody someday, because it's very, very cool, to know that somewhere you made somebody's life a little bit better, or you gave them a light in some dark times.
Yeah, 100%.
It's really beautiful. But yeah, he's my dad. It's kind of that's that.
Did he read you William Gibson bedtime stories?
No. Okay, no, but let's see. Mote in God's Eye. A lot of sci-fi. A
Yeah.
lot of sci-fi, actually. Mote in God's Eye. A series about a teleporter that I cannot remember the title of to save my life, but it was one of the old sci-fi classics. Snow Crash at one point. Nothing like super dark and gritty that I could recall.
Yeah.
But definitely a lot of sci-fi and Snow Crash, which is a great book that I had a great time having read to me when I was younger.
That's cool. I didn't actually expect your dad to like read you bedtime stories of like old sci-fi stuff. That's actually pretty cool. Did you
It was very
did you ever have a lifeline with your dad where you could like come to him with game master tips, cuz everybody has their like influential person, and was your dad the guy that was like, this is how you run a game or whatever?
I mean, definitely to start with. He was like a lot of the foundation. I picked up a lot from him and a lot from my mother, Lisa, because I was running games by them. I picked up a lot of I picked up a lot of a lot of nasty tricks and a lot of sort of GM management tools from both of them, that I have continued to use into my later life. Mike is the one who first showed me how to set up a kill box in a game table for con games.
For con games,
old,
the guy has no mercy, man.
yeah. Oh, it's the old hide the enemy and then put something the players want right in the middle of an open field. And if they're dumb enough to go for it,
it's the cyberpunk version of Mimic.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I have a lot of fond memories from a lot of games that I both ran with them and was run in by them.
Yeah.
So
to answer, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask what the second question was. I got lost for a moment.
I was going to ask. See, we're on sync here, Cody. I was going to actually say the second question. The next one was what you were just about to answer, I think, is how common was game night at the Pondsmith household. I guess everybody imagines that you guys you don't even eat. You don't sleep, you don't eat. It's just Cyberpunk, Witcher, tabletop gaming till I die, for life, thug life.
We had a weekly game for quite a while when I was younger. We haven't actually had a big game night, obviously recently for reasons. But I was running Mask of Nyarlathotep with them and our art director Jay Kovac and our managing editor Aaron Tarbuck for a while, which I really want to get back to that game.
Shout out. Yeah, Aaron is he new to Art Talsorian? I just saw that he
he's new in a way. We've had him he's been a family friend for a very long time.
Gotcha.
And we have often consulted his great wisdom on the games industry. But he is new officially, as it were.
Gotcha. So he's like he was always around, but now he's like official RTG employee.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's great. I mean, obviously we're all jealous. Everybody would love to play a game with Mike and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's like one of those holy grail things for everybody, and for good reason. The guy's a genius. Obviously, he's your dad, so you know all about that. But I do have to ask you, would you want to play in my game? You're invited to play.
If I were not horrendously busy, I'd say set up a time right now.
Of
but
course.
it may take a little bit of planning back and forth.
Oh yeah, no, it's not tomorrow or next week or anything like that. I'm talking about in the future because I was shocked when I heard that James had never played Cyberpunk. He told me I'd never played it. I've only ran it. I've never been a player. So I was shocked and I'm like, all right, no, you're going to play in my game. I'm going to throw my homebrew rules at you and you're going to be confused, but we're going to play it together. So I'm extending that same invitation to you for the future.
I would be honored. I would be honored.
That's awesome, man. I'm glad to hear it. Well, hey, man, we've talked a lot. I'm sure we could keep talking. I don't want to keep you too long. I'm seriously so honored to have you on, man. I really appreciate everything you guys do at RTG and how much support I've been getting from you guys. It's seriously, I don't even know how to explain how that makes me feel because, like I said, I've been a big fan of Cyberpunk, Talsorian, and it's good to see you guys doing well. It makes me happy to see you guys doing well, and I can't wait to see what else you guys have in the future for us.
Well, I am absolutely honored to come on and that you asked me. This has been a ton of fun.
All right, man. We'll do it again whenever Black Chrome is about to come out. How about you and James come on and we chat about it and stuff like that? Whenever you guys can actually say something about it.
Sounds good to me.
Is there anything coming up? I know you guys are going to be at a convention soon. Is there anything that you wanted to plug on that? Should I look it up for you?
We have an appearance at TotalCon, where we are doing some games. And then I think we're going to be we're doing Gamma, obviously, but that's not a more of a consumer convention. I think the next thing we really solidly have planned is if fingers crossed that we get this COVID situation worked out by August. I deeply miss going to Gen Con last year.
Yeah. I think have they said that it's not coming back this year? Because I feel like I think we're kind of going a little bit back to normal, right?
From everything I've seen, Gen Con is planning for an in-person convention, but it's all going to kind of depend on how we handle the next few months, I think.
Of course. I mean, the good news is I saw an article saying more people are vaccinated or have had COVID than are actually in danger of having it. So it's like we're getting past that hump and we picked the one hobby where we got to be in each other's faces swapping germs.
Unfortunately.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I wish you guys the best. I can't wait for the future. Is there anything else you want to say before we sign out?
I gotta be horribly cliche for a moment and say it's really great to reach out and talk to you and be able to kind of talk, indirectly to the community. We really, if you ever wonder, everybody out there, we really genuinely love you and care about you. It is amazing to see this community grow.
I couldn't have said it better, man. And I really appreciate everything you guys do. We'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for the support. Have a good one, guys. Bye.